This conference will now be recorded.
Well, welcome everyone. This is our third webinar in communication skills. And if you were here for one or two of the others, let's see who's out there for a moment. If you were here for listening, or if you were here for feedback, or for both, just type in if you can and say you're new, or you were here for both, or you were here for one. Let's see who's out there. I recognize some names. But I'd love to see, yep, both. Terry, I remember you. You spell your name in an unusual manner. Laura, great. Tiffany M was here for the second one. Desiree was here for the feedback. Jennifer, I think you were here for both, right? Are you Jennifer from Charleston?
Looks like we have a couple of Jennifers. I'm not sure
Oh, maybe.
who's what here.
Yeah. So, and where are we all coming from today? If you could just give me, where do we have individuals or groups? Audrey was here for both, great. Jennifer S was here for the second webinar, right? Right. And where are we all coming from today, just so we have a sense of place? Charleston, woot woot. Do we have a group there or just a couple of individuals? Eastover, whoa, nice. Columbia, lovely. And that's where you are as well, right, Tiffany H?
Yes.
Columbia,
Yay,
yeah.
Columbia.
York County. We have Lexington. Go Lexington. Lexington's been here since the beginning. Well, the reason I'm asking, thank you so much for typing in where you're coming from. The reason I'm asking is those of you who were here for listening and those of you who were here for feedback are going to be reminded of some of the principles we talked about. This is the third in the series, not by happenstance. We actually need a foundation in mindful listening and a foundation in actionable feedback in order to truly get the most out of conflict. That said, I don't want to scare anyone. If you weren't here, that's 100% fine. I'm just going to go over a couple of small concepts, or rather, they're large concepts, but I'm going to go over them a little bit minimally that we might have gone over before, just to give you a little bit of that foundation. Because, of course, in terms of conflict management, if you're not listening, you're going to have a hard time with managing that conflict. Before we start, this is called conflict management. Do you know that it used to be called conflict resolution? Actually, until about 12 years ago, the whole field used to be called conflict resolution. It's no longer called conflict resolution. Can someone tell me why? Who has an idea why this whole field has changed its name from conflict resolution to conflict management? You can't resolve conflicts. Let's put an always in there. You can't always resolve conflicts. Sometimes you can. If you and I are having a conflict and it's based on a misunderstanding, we might resolve it. But if it's based on a hardcore difference of opinion, it's not going to get resolved easily. So, for example, if I didn't see you running for the elevator and I left to the third floor and you had to wait and you're upset with me and we talk it out and I say I'm very sorry, we have now resolved our conflict, right? You know that I don't dislike you. You know that I don't want something ill for you. But if I actively hurt someone in your family and I try to explain why, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to be okay for you. We are never, ever going to resolve that conflict. The best we can do is to manage it. At which point you tell me, if you hurt someone in my family again, I will call the police. And I will say, okay, I'm not going to do that again because I don't want you to call the police. We have now managed a conflict. We still don't like each other, but it's managed. Now, most of the conflicts that we're having are based in misunderstandings. Most of the people that we know, that we work with, that we deal with on a day-to-day basis at home and at work, they do not want to hurt us. They do not want us to be unhappy. So it's a very big realization that most conflicts actually are based in misunderstanding. Once we get that idea, then we can look for the misunderstanding. But one thing I want to say is we're trying to get a handle on what kind of conflict it is. Now, is all conflict bad? Ooh, 6 in the main library training room from Charleston. Others are joining in. Woot woot to Charleston. Nice. I think Charleston might hold the record. Maybe followed by Lexington. I'm not sure. So the question is all conflict bad? The answer is absolutely not. Conflict creates change, right? Rosa Parks will tell you that if she hadn't created conflict by not getting out of her seat, things might not have changed. Conflict creates a time and a place to discuss what's going wrong and to make changes, right? So we certainly do not want to live in a world without conflict. It would be boring for one, and it would make poor decisions for two. Why don't we try to imagine a library with no conflict? One person says, hey, I have an idea. Let's stop ordering books. And everybody says, okay. And then another person says, hey, I have an idea. Let's close every weekend. And everybody says, okay. Clearly, this is not a library we want to be part of. The lack of conflict is creating a climate where people are afraid to speak their truth, where people are afraid to disagree because conflict is considered bad. What we want is a climate where conflict is expected. It's good, it's expected, and it's functional. If you're writing notes, write that down. It's positive, it's expected, and it's functional. And we'll get really clear what functional is. So this was in our first session, Seek First to Understand, Then to Be Understood. It's a premise of mindful listening. Well, guess what? It's also a foundation to functional conflict. If you disagree with me, let's take Tiffany Hayes as an example. If Tiffany H and I are having a conflict, and I can talk to her till I'm blue in the face about why I'm right, why will that not work? I'm being rational, reasonable, and persuasive. I'm going to talk to Tiffany Hayes until I'm blue in the face about why I'm right. Somebody tell me why that will not resolve the conflict. That's exactly correct, Elizabeth, Tiffany M. You're exactly right. I'm not listening. If I'm not listening, the conflict won't get resolved. Here's what needs to happen in order for the conflict to get resolved. Each of us needs to hear the other. So I will take the high road and I will say, Tiffany, you seem really upset with me. What's going on? What are you seeing? She will express her perspective. And you know what happens in that moment? Her anger de-escalates because she feels heard. When someone feels heard, they're less angry. Do you know why we feel angry as people? One of the biggest reasons we feel angry is when we feel that we are not seen or not heard. So as soon as Tiffany feels heard, her anger de-escalates, then she's ready to hear me. I paraphrase what she said. If I'm a good communicator, I say, okay, so I'm understanding that I came late and that made you upset. I really misunderstood. I thought the time started later, whatever I say to her. And Tiffany is very likely to hear me. Why? Because I followed Stephen Covey, bless his name's advice. Everyone, if you're not going to tattoo this on your arm, at least print it out and hang it somewhere near your computer. This is a recipe for less dysfunctional conflict, more functional conflict. Not necessarily more conflict, but if you have it, it'll be more functional. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Is there anyone that doesn't understand why that directly relates to conflict? If you can picture, I know you can't see me, but everyone put up your hands as if you're going to box someone, right? With your fists up, and then turn your fists facing each other so that if your hands opened, they'd be talking to each other. Now, if we're in a conflict, we're just butting heads. Your hands are now hitting each other, right? You're butting heads. But if I say to you, tell me your perspective, I want to understand. What I've done is I've opened one of the fists, I've relaxed my hand. Can you picture that? Now, angry fist is still talking, talking, talking. But once they've talked, they open, they relax. They say to me, what's your perspective? Everything has de-escalated. Everything is less tense. So, okay, let's go ahead to the next screen. Is it a conflict? I've got news for you. Y'all might be having some stuff that's not conflict. It's just bad feelings. Let me tell you why. If somebody doesn't know that there's a conflict going on, it's not considered a conflict. Let me give you an example. If somebody comes in late every day and you're their boss and you're very annoyed and you never tell them, let's say the girl's name is Dana. So Dana comes in late every day. And her boss, Marcy, sees this. And Marcy's incredibly annoyed. And Marcy's been watching for 2 months. And basically 3 days a week, Dana walks in late and Marcy's annoyed. Is this a conflict? Do you think it's a conflict? Marcy's clearly annoyed. Laura is correct. Laura, you're right. It is not a conflict. A conflict has to be expressed. It is only a conflict when Marcy brings it to the table and says, Dana, we need to talk about your arrival times. I've noticed that they're not fitting exactly what's on the timesheet, or I've noticed that they're not what we discussed when you were hired. Now it's a conflict, and now it can be resolved. If there's no confrontation, there's no conflict. Now, by confrontation, I do not mean grabbing somebody by the shirt neck and shaking them. Confrontation simply means putting it on the table. If you don't put it on the table, it's not an expressed conflict. It's not an expressed struggle. It's actually a conflict in your own mind. So have fun with that. Good luck with that, but it's never going to get resolved. In order to fit the academic definition of a conflict, people need to actually know what's going on. It can't just be in your own mind. Perceived incompatible goals. You want me to come on time. I want to come late. Now, that's perceived as a key word there because they might not be incompatible. We might be able to come up with a different schedule, but it's perceived incompatible. Perceived scarce resources. This is a conflict, absolutely. Interdependence. If we're not interdependent, we don't actually have much of a conflict. Let me give you an example. If you're walking outside the library and you see a group of teenage boys, doing something obnoxious, let's say they're rating women as they go by, right? Like she's a 10, she's a 5. That is so obnoxious. That is so horrible. It's outside your library. You need people to feel at home and you need people to feel safe. Therefore, there's some interdependence there. They're on your space. Therefore, you need to talk to them. But if it's in the middle of town, are you really having a conflict? You can make a conflict. You can go up to them and say, that's inappropriate. I don't want to see it. But they're not really on your turf. You're not dependent on them and they're not dependent on you. You're not sharing space. So that's only a conflict if you want it to be one, in terms of if you're willing to interact. When it's in your space in front of your library, there's interdependence there. Do you get what I mean? Check in and let me know if you're with me so far on the first 4. Express struggle, perceived incompatible goals, perceive scarce resources and interdependence. Terry's with me. Tiffany's with me. Great, great. Thank you so much. It's good for me to see that we're here. Now, this is the most important one. Inevitability. I have a fairy tale for you. All right, I'm going to tell you a fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a lovely land where there was no conflict. Everyone always agreed about everything. Whenever they fell in love, and everybody fell in love with just one person, and they were loved back, they never argued about anything. Whenever they worked, they agreed about everything, and everyone lived happily ever after. Now, that is clearly a fairy tale. Why is that so clear? Because there's no possibility. It's boring, for one. Laura's absolutely right. Now, does anyone want to live in that land? Is that appealing to anyone? Harmony for all, no conflict? I know that it appeals. Pamela, you're exactly right. It doesn't appeal to someone who's trying to grow. It might appeal for 5 minutes. Yeah, actually, and on a bad day, maybe for 10 minutes, right? But it doesn't appeal if we're trying to grow. So the world we live in is not a fairy tale. We have conflict here, there, and everywhere. But no need for this conflict to be negative. Our challenge in life is not to eliminate conflict. You're right, South Carolina. Yeah, no variety, no new ideas. Our challenge is not to eliminate conflict. Our challenge is to change destructive conflict into constructive. Another way of saying that, to change dysfunctional conflict into functional conflict. So inevitability, if it's conflict, of course it's conflict. If you get a job, congratulations, happy birthday, you're going to have conflict. If you don't, I don't know where you work. I mean, even the elves at the North Pole have conflict, for goodness sakes, right? So inevitability of conflict, that is very important. Why is that so important? Can someone tell me what's the problem if you don't think conflict is inevitable? If someone assumes conflict is bad, what's the problem there? Absolutely. You're afraid of change. They'll avoid conflict. And as a matter of fact, they'll think they're breaking up as soon as they have conflict. You meet a nice person, you're unwilling to voice the need for change because you're afraid. If you're afraid of conflict, you're willing to suffer an awful lot. You don't know how to handle it. That's right. So congratulations to all of you. Conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen, and it is a good thing. It produces growth. It produces change. We need conflict in order to change. Imagine a child, all right? Imagine a child, 3, 4 years old, 5 years old. Imagine that they never have any conflict. Their mom says, I want to buy you this hat. And they say, okay. And their dad says, let's sit here. And they say, okay. Can you see how that child is not really developing in a normal manner? It's much more normal for the child to say, I don't want the red hat. I want the green hat. And the mom says, okay, we could work that out. The child is learning how to vocalize, learning how to voice what they want. The dad says, you sit here. The child says, I want to sit without a seatbelt. The dad says, I'm sorry, that's not an option. We're not going to leave until you put on your seatbelt. And the child learns that some things are non-negotiable, which is a good thing to learn, right? The point is, can you see how that's growth? If you never have conflict, you stay static and you do not grow. So I know this is going to sound weird. You actually want conflict. You want conflict in your relationships. You want conflict in your work. But what the preface is, the adjective is functional. You want functional conflict. So let's go to the next slide. What's the difference between functional conflict and dysfunctional conflict? pretty clear. I'm going to skip right away to the bottom, and then we're going to go back up. The results make it clear. I saw your conflict examples at the beginning. And by the way, it's not too late. If anybody would like to put up a conflict example, you could put it up at any time during this webinar. You could just write conflict example and give us an example, and we'll discuss if that's functional or dysfunctional and how we know. You know, the one where somebody quit, obviously dysfunctional. The one where somebody exploded, obviously dysfunctional. And we'll discuss why. So integration versus polarization. In a functional conflict, we're working together. There's a we, nobody's wrong, nobody's a monster, nobody's trying to make me unhappy. We just have a different way of going about it. Let me give you an example. At one of the colleges where I work, Elon University, there's a lot of talk about whether the non-tenured track instructors should have a union. Some people think that they should, and some people think that they shouldn't. It's a very highly functional conflict. People are voicing in on either side of the issue, and they're saying, look, we all want this to be the best university possible. We want to support our faculty. What's the best way to do it? Now, when this same discussion came to Duke, it was extremely polarized. And the administration said, if you're fighting for a union, you're fighting against Duke. And that was one of the statements that was said. I'm not sure if it was those exact words. And the union said, you know, look, that's not how we want to go about it. But of course, when one person polarizes, it's hard for the other side. So what we want to do to make dysfunctional conflicts functional, what we want to do is not refer to one person in negative terms. They're not bad. They're not wrong. They're not mistaken. They simply have a different perspective. Let's be problem-oriented and look at different ways of solving the problem. We can persuade them in our ways better, but one person's not bad. We're not trying to polarize. We're trying to integrate and look at the different ways. Is that clear? Everybody with me as we move on to cooperation versus opposition? Yes, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your piping in. Cooperation versus opposition is very close to our integration versus polarization. Let us assume that we are a we. Let us assume that we're in this together. So if you are my boss and you say to me, we need to lay off some people, and I'm not sure how that's going to affect your department. If we're in opposition, I say to you, don't mess with my people. Like I'm Michael Scott from The Office, right? Don't mess with my people. This is not okay. You figure out your problems your way. I disagree that I don't think we need to lay off anyone, and we are hereby in opposition. If we're in cooperation, I say, wow, that's really rough. Can I help in any way dealing with the finances so that we maybe don't have to lay people off? Or can I be included in the discussions so that it's not a surprise to anyone? Now we're in cooperation. We are in this together rather than you. Confirmation versus disconfirmation. Sounding familiar to the feedback people. If I confirm you, I see you, I appreciate you, I support you. If I disconfirm you, you don't matter. So a way to confirm in the middle of conflict, let's say we're having a really heated conflict. Let's say you tell me, you know, look, I was at that conference for 3 days, you were in charge, and these horrible things happened while you were in charge. Okay, big conflict is about to go down. I'm going to be disconfirming. I'm going to say, how dare you tell me what I did wrong when you weren't even here? I'm using you language. I'm using confrontational language. I'm basically saying your viewpoint doesn't matter. Now I'm going to be confirming. I'm going to say, you know, I never realized how tough your job is. This was really hard holding things together. I'd love your help trying to maintain the balance that we had before you left. because it's true. Things are a little bit up in the air right now. In other words, your view matters. You matter. Any conflict can be either confirming or disconfirming. I'm going to actually ask for a volunteer here. Can I ask for someone to volunteer to say something to me that's very disconfirming? And we're just making it up. You could say, my dog chased your cat. You can say, my child tore your book. I want someone to say something disconfirming to me. You are starting a dysfunctional conflict, but I am going to confirm and make it functional. Who's going to volunteer for me?
I will if nobody else. Oh,
Awesome.
someone.
Awesome. Laura, I like your
Laura has
comment.
something.
Put you in charge. Yeah, that's was that your disconfirming start? I'm just checking in. Okay, I love it, Laura. Let's do it. So, Tiffany H, I want you to just put that into words so that we could hear this. Go ahead and
Okay.
just say that, and you could add to it.
Who put you in charge?
Wow. That's a good question. Actually, Allison put me in charge, but I don't mean to say that you're not part of the discussion, because you are. Let's figure out together what to do. Tiffany, do you feel disconfirmed?
No, I like that I'm included.
Yeah. So dysfunction is where it's all about me versus you. Functional conflict is we're focused on the issue here. We're in it together. We want to confirm versus disconfirm. Does anyone else have a challenge for me? Say something disconfirming. Say something nasty, disconfirming. I don't care what you say. It could be Laura again. It could be Desiree, Pamela, Jennifer, anyone, Tiffany included, both Tiffany's. Go ahead, Tiffany H. I'll volunteer you if I don't see anyone else. Oh, pettiness ruined my Christmas cheer. I love it, Desiree. You go, girl. Okay, this is awesome. Your pettiness ruined my Christmas cheer. Conflict resolution is stupid. People just need to do what I say. I'm the boss. Wow, Jennifer, you warm my heart. Did you watch the Bob Newhart? You'll love the Bob Newhart clip. Okay, so let me deal with both of these. Okay, somebody comes up to me and says, "You were so petty that my holiday is ruined. You and your conflict resolution, making me stay late at work." People need to do what I say. I'm the boss. I say, "I'm so sorry to have ruined your Christmas cheer. I certainly didn't mean to." Now, why am I apologizing? I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not. I'm apologizing for ruining your cheer. I didn't mean to ruin your cheer. I didn't say I apologize for existing. I didn't say I apologize for what I said. I said I apologize for ruining your Christmas cheer. Unless that was my goal, I can perfectly honestly apologize for doing that. And then you said conflict resolution is stupid. Say, I think that there are a lot of workshops on conflict resolution, and it can feel like it's stupid. And it's true that you're the boss. The question is, Jennifer, the question is, do people do what you say? Or do you feel like we need help with that? Because if people always do what you say, then maybe you're right and we don't need this. But if there is conflict, maybe we need to figure out how to work it out. Did you hear the we language? Jennifer, are you feeling okay about that answer? And Desiree, did you feel okay with that apology? The thing is, make it we, make it confirming, make it positive, right? Don't be stingy on your apologies. Did everyone notice I didn't apologize to Desiree for something I didn't do? I simply apologized for her perception. I didn't say I apologize for your perception. I said I apologize for ruining your Christmas cheer. Okay, so agreement versus coercion. Coercion doesn't work, whether it's a child, a teenager, a worker, a boss. Coercion leaves people very, very resentful. And even if you win the battle, you lose the war. Have you seen this in real life? I'm assuming that you have. Coercion works for the moment, but not at all long term. If I said to Tiffany Hayes right now, Tiffany Hayes, I'm going to say in front of everybody here that you're signing me up for another webinar, so you have to do it. Well, she might do it, but my reputation would go down and she would never sign me up again. So I'd win the battle but lose the war. Coercion absolutely festers. That's exactly right. De-escalation versus escalation. Listen up, y'all. Your goal in a conflict is to de-escalate. When tensions escalate, people get defensive. When people get defensive, nobody's listening. Filters break down, and things rapidly get worse. When we de-escalate, such as by listening rather than talking, when we de-escalate, things get better. When things escalate, things get worse. Focusing versus drifting. We do not want to include everything but the kitchen sink here. So if you say to me, why do you always steal my pens? And I say back to you, what are you talking about? You steal my jackets. If all I steal is your pens, you're lucky, right? That is called drifting. That's called going into another topic. You would say to me, okay, we could talk about the jackets, but the point is I'm looking for a pen and I don't have one. Stay on a topic. People who are good at conflict management have laser focus. One thing at a time, no matter what the person says. So let's say we're talking about a fundraiser and you say, I think we should have a races day, invite everybody in and we'll have all different races in terms of like a 3-legged race and, an egg race and, all these different types of fun races. And somebody else drifts and says, you always get your idea. Bring it back. Say, okay, that topic for another day, because we could definitely talk about that. But for now, does anyone have any other ideas for this day, for February 2nd? Right? Don't let it drift. Have a laser focus. Foresight versus short-sightedness. This is big. Do you care about the future or do you care about the present? People who care about the present more than the future have dysfunctional conflicts because they need to be right. They need to be right. They need to be recognized as being right. They need an apology. They're not looking ahead to the relationship and where it's going to be in a year or 2 years or 5 years. So these are the keys to going from dysfunctional to functional. We want to be on the left side. We want the integration. We want the cooperation. We want the confirmation. We don't want the right side. And if we start doing what's on the right side, start to go back. Are we pretty clear on that? And that will lead to positive results. Frankly, between you and me, positive results on conflict, it's like breaking an arm. It's like breaking a limb. It heals stronger. Have you ever had a conflict with someone you love? Your mom, your sister, your brother, your son, someone you love. And after the conflict, you're stronger. Has anyone ever had that? Yeah. Yes. Yes. This is absolutely one of the wonderful things about conflict. Let me tell you about a situation that I particularly recall in my life. Was a friend hurt my feelings very badly. I really felt left out. I felt like she said something without my permission. And I was very hurt. And months went by where I did not talk to this friend. And in my mind, we were having a conflict. Now, you all know that according to the academic terms, we weren't actually having a conflict. I was having my own little conflict in my own mind. She didn't even realize I was mad at her. Or she kind of realized because I wasn't reaching out, but she didn't understand what was going on. When I finally confronted her and I said, why did you say that in front of everyone? You embarrassed me. I didn't give you permission to say that. She was horrified. She said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought I was teasing you. I didn't realize you were sensitive about it. I really thought I was teasing you in front of people who love you. I did not see it from your perspective, and I'm so sorry, and I won't do that again. Someone tell me why we are better friends than before this happened. We had a fight. Why would we be better friends? It should have weakened the relationship. Instead, it strengthened the relationship. Someone tell me why. We have a new limit. Very good. In other words, she understands what I need and what I don't need. Good. What else? Better boundaries. I know she's able to apologize. You talk things out. Very good. Here's the thing. We both did something difficult. It was not easy for me to confront her. I wanted to just pretend everything was fine, but I couldn't because we weren't comfortable with each other. It was always there. By confronting her, she knows she's important enough to me that I'm going to be okay being uncomfortable for a minute. She's important enough to me that I'm going to make it work. And you know what? I'm important enough to her that she apologized, that she never did it again, that she made sure that I was feeling better about it. So we have realized the new boundaries, the new limits, that's all correct. We have realized that we appreciate each other and we're there for each other even more than we thought. So we talked things out and we got to a new place. That's wonderful. That could happen in personal relationships. That could also happen at work. If your boss tells you, I've been watching you for months and you've been late 3 days a week, how do you feel? Don't you feel like saying, how come you never mentioned it before? I didn't even realize it bothered you. Does anyone feel like that? Does anyone feel like, why was she watching you and you didn't even know? So, but if your boss says, for the last couple of weeks, I've noticed you coming in a few days later, and you say, yes, I'm so sorry. One of our cars broke down and I've had to drive my husband to work. And I was going to talk to you about whether I could shift my schedule down to start at 9:30 and end at 5:30. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you feel picked on by your boss or do you feel seen by your boss? I'm guessing seen. I'm guessing seen, right? That's foresight. Okay. So positive results result from making it functional. Are we all clear on this slide? This is a very pivotal slide. Yep, we're good. Jessica's clear. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead to the next slide. And this slide is a repeat of feedback. We're just going to go through it real fast. In order to have positive feedback, it's the same technique as having positive conflict. We use language of responsibility, I and we versus you. Instead of saying you're always late, for example, we might say, we don't want to meet without you because you add a lot of good ideas to the meeting. Or I notice that sometimes you're not in your office in the morning when I'm here. I notice. Or I feel sad when I'm the only one staying late when we have a project due, rather than you never stay late, right? Lose the but. We talked about that. Buts are never good. If I say to you, you're the most amazing worker ever, but you don't even want to hear the end of that sentence. So if we're in a conflict and I say to you, I completely understand everything you're saying, but I might as well say, I don't understand anything. I might as well say, but I completely don't understand anything because I'm losing everything I said first. So lose the but, switch it with an and. So it might sound like this. I understand why you need to come late, and I'm concerned about the effect on the rest of the group. Or, I understand why you really want to hold a carnival, and I don't know if we have the funding for that. So without but, you could use and. Description versus evaluation. Say exactly what's going on. Evaluation means good or bad. You're standing on high and you're judging like God. So you say, you are good, you are bad, this is good, this is bad. don't do it. I would say description is much more powerful and less likely to make people defensive. So for me to say, I really loved the way that you integrated the pictures into this, or I kind of missed the illustrations. I think it might be better with some illustrations, right? That's not going to make anybody defensive. All right, problem orientation versus control. Just to clarify, we're focusing on the issue, not on who's doing what. Let's give an extreme example. Carol and Peter are getting a divorce. They're at a mediator. They're having a lot of conflict. So Carol says, Peter, you never pick up John from baseball. Peter says, Carol, you never spend enough time with John. They're trying to control each other. They're trying to tell each other what to do. So the mediator says, I'm sorry, John needs to be picked up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Who's going to do that? De-escalating the conflict is focusing on the problem. So how does this come up at work? Basically, you're having issues. Why are you on your cell phone? Why were you late to the meeting? No, it's not about you. It's not about controlling anybody. It's about, okay, do we have enough votes to make this happen? Do we have enough money to make this happen? Let's focus on the problem. I'm not trying to control you, and you're not trying to control me. Everybody with me? Are there any questions for me? We're going to do an activity next, so don't fall asleep, anyone. You all awake? Okay, good, good, good. Empathy versus neutrality. It's a way to show you care. Great, excellent. It's a way to show you care. Neutrality sounds like it's your decision, or I don't know, that's up to you. That's just another way of saying I don't care. And then equality versus superiority. As we said last time, there's never a time to be superior. Whether your IQ is higher, whether your emotional intelligence is higher, whether you have a better job, you're not superior. You might be in charge. That doesn't make you superior. Superiority really sets people to their very defensive selves. When someone acts superior, it's very hard to take for most of us. And provisionalism versus certainty. If I say to you, don't hire that person, you're going to regret it. Where does that leave you? You have nowhere to go from there. You're just going to get defensive and you're going to leave. But if I say to you, I understand that they had problems when they were working in North Carolina, let's talk to their boss first. Or let's make sure that they're a good fit. That's provisional language, allowing an out rather than being who's super certain. People who are super certain, they're hard to talk to. Do you know people like that? You're going to be like, yep, yep, yep. I know we all know people like that. So this is just a brief review for those of you who are here for Feedback Week and a brief little rundown of how to mitigate defensiveness. Someone tell me why this is so important in conflict management. It is of the utmost importance to lessen defensiveness in order to appropriately manage conflict. Tell me why. And I know you can picture it the other way. If defensiveness is high, nothing's going to get done. But why is your first order of business to lessen defensiveness in order for conflict management to go well? Let's see what we got. Yes, thank you, Terry, so you can hear each other. That's exactly right, Jennifer. When people get defensive, they stop listening. Everyone form a cross across your chest with your hands, fist to shoulders, a big X rather than a cross, right? You're not listening anymore. You're busy defending your actions. You're not listening. Exactly right, Jessica. Nobody listens if they're defensive. Here's the deal, y'all. It doesn't matter what you say. Once someone's defensive, backtracking takes a lot of time and energy. The goal is to not make them defensive in the first place. Because making someone undefensive, it's like teasing a lion. The lion gets all upset, and then you're like, "Oh, sorry, man. Sorry, lion. Here, have a piece of meat." The lion's not going to calm down in a second. All right, you now have an angry lion on your hands. Why don't we try making the lion happy in the first place? Give it a little meat, sing it a little music, deal with it in whatever way you want. Don't make the lion angry in the first place because you can't calm it down right away. All right, so when people get defensive, they stop listening. Sorry, we just had a puppy try to turn off this computer. No, no, no. Okay, so they go right to their justifications. All right, so let's go ahead to our next slide. We're going to do an exercise. Everybody needs either a pen and pencil or the ability to work on a computer. We're going to do this step by step together. If you are on board, let me know you're on board doing this. Just say on board or OB or whatever you want to say. I need to know how many people are doing this exercise. On board, OB, good, good, good. Excellent. I see Elizabeth. I see everybody. Joanne. Okay, great, great, great. Jennifer, very good. Elizabeth, okay, excellent. Everyone, step one, please write down the name of a person. We're not going to share this, don't worry. It's only for you. It's an exercise that you'll learn how to do, and then you can do it on your own. Write down the name of a person with whom you are annoyed or upset at this time. Now, it can be an old argument, it can be a new argument, but not something that's already resolved. Write down the name of a person with whom you are annoyed or upset. Can be personal or professional for this activity. I want you to rate your level of annoyance or anger on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is extremely hurt. Not sure you can ever get over it. 1 is barely bothered at all. All right, so everybody go ahead and rate that. You do not have to tell me the number. Write it down for yourself. You're up to step 2. In about a paragraph, I want you to write down why you're upset. Don't tell me, this is just for you. We'll have parts of it at the end where you'll share with me. But for now, this is just for you. Why are you upset? What happened? What did they do? What did you do? What was said? Be as specific as possible. This is for you. So everybody who's participating has written down the name of a person. You've rated your level of anger or annoyance on a scale of 1 to 10. You're writing down why you're upset. After you have done step number 2, I want you to, whoops, we need to get Doggy out of room. Hang on one second. After you've written down step number 2, I want you to start step number 3, and I'm going to check in with you at that point. Come on, baby. The barking was not part of the communication process from here. Okay, so at this point, you say, dear, your name. So, dear Sharon, dear Tiffany, dear Elizabeth, I want you to write a half-page letter from this person to you, explaining their perspective in detail about this issue, about what happened. Look at it through their eyes. Try hard to convey their point of view without your own influencing it. So don't say things like, I'm a narrow-minded person. They don't think they're narrow-minded. Paint the picture from their eyes. Be as specific as possible. When you're finished, sign their name. I'm going to give you a few minutes. This should take at least a few moments to do. And just to be as specific as possible and really try as if they were telling you, here's what I was thinking. So just to give you an example, if they left dishes in the sink, they wouldn't write, I don't care about cleanliness. They would write, look, I'm really sorry, I was busy, whatever their perspective is. All right, I'm checking in. If you finish this half-page letter, should be at least half a page, approximately, 3 to 5 minutes. If you finish, give me a check or just say check. Great. When we get a few checks, we'll go on to the next page. We're not done yet. Super, super. Now, if you're not done, maybe take a picture of the screen, or I don't want you to lose the screen if you're doing it. You're writing a half-page letter. You're conveying their point of view, and sign their name. Don't forget to sign their name. That's an important part. Great. Meanwhile, let's move on to the next screen. But please, if you need us to go back to this screen for a moment, just let us know. We're happy to do that. We'll go ahead over to the next screen. This is continued. Great. And I want you to answer the following questions in writing. In writing. Now, is there anyone who'd like us to wait a moment? Is there anyone who's almost done? Just say 1 second or wait a moment, where I'm happy to wait a minute if that's, would anyone like me to wait 1 minute? Just pipe in now. Okay, we're on the same page then. So please answer the following questions. Question number 1. In what way is your perspective on this issue valid or understandable in this matter? Write it down, 1 or 2 sentences. And then the second question, of course, is in what way is their perspective valid or understandable in this matter? I want you to look at it from both sides and answer both of those questions. And then wait for me. All right, you should be answering in what way is their perspective valid, understandable. And when you get there, the question is, tell me, what do you admire or respect about this person? Because most people are not Hitler or Mussolini or Stalin. Most people have something about them that we can respect, even if we disagree, even if we're very, very different. What can we respect? What do you admire or respect about this person? Write that down first, and then I'm going to ask you to reach a little further. What are 3 additional characteristics that you appreciate about this person? So, for example, if they're always on your case and they're just really always very negative, maybe you respect that they care so much about their job. Maybe an additional characteristic is that they're never late. Maybe they take things very seriously. Maybe they are incredibly responsible and dependable. Maybe you don't love how responsible and dependable they are every day at work, but you can appreciate it when I ask you. So 3 additional characteristics that you appreciate about this person. It's a rare person indeed that we can find nothing that we appreciate. Is everybody with me up to 5? If you're up to 5, just type a 5. Great, I'll wait for a few more. Okay, thank you. So on a scale of 1 to 5, think about this. How important is it to you to have a positive relationship with this person at this time in your life? Explain. So if Tiffany H. and I were having a conflict, the question is, how important is it to me? I would say 4 or 5. I want to be friends. I want to have a positive relationship with her. I would explain why that's important to me. If it's someone in my personal life, if it's someone in my professional life, explain why it's important or not. 1 to 5, and then explain. So you're answering question 5 now. Maybe a sentence or 2 to explain. When you're ready, you can go on to 6. On a scale of 1 to 5, how important is it to you? Oh, I had a typo. To have a positive relationship with this person in the future. Let's say 2 years from now. I would say it's very important. My peer, my friend, right? My boss. I would say very important. 2 years from now, explain. Some of you may feel it's less important. 5 is very important. And then 7, are we ready for 7? If you're ready for 7, just type a 7 for me. Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that we're mostly staying on the same page. I know people take different amounts of time. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much will the situation that's currently upsetting you with this person matter 2 years from now? Maybe not at all. Maybe 1. Maybe your feelings were so hurt that you feel it'll still matter very, very much. And just explain that answer. And that's a very key question in this exercise. So we're going to come back and discuss it. And rate how upset you feel about this situation on a scale of 1 to 10. Think about the situation. Remember, you rated it in the beginning? I don't care what you said. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. After the exercise, you may feel differently or you may not. How upset do you feel? How annoyed do you feel? How angry do you feel toward this person or about this situation on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst? And what I'd like to see is, if you did this exercise, I'd like to see 2 numbers. Your first number on a scale of 1 to 10 and your second number on a scale of 1 to 10. So maybe you started with a 10 and you ended with a 10. Maybe you started with a 5 and you ended with an 8, or you started with an 8 and you ended with a 4. I'd like to see 2 numbers from everyone, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, where you are. So Jessica started at an 8, ended at a 5. Terry started at a 7, ended at a 5. And I'm not rushing you whenever you're ready. Started at a 9, ended at an 8, started at a 7, ended at a 4. Started at a 9, ended at an 8, 8 to 5. 6 to 1, 7 to 4, 8 to 3. This is all great. Now, we might get one that doesn't reduce. We might even get one that goes up, although that's unusual. 8 and 10, good. Did anyone's number go up? Sometimes when we're very angry about something, dwelling on it could make us feel worse. That can happen, but it's unusual. It's a rare thing. Generally, this is called a perspective taking exercise. It makes our numbers go down, 8 and 10. So Laura's numbers, did your numbers go up? The first one was 8 and the second one was 10, Laura? I'm just checking to make sure I understand. Okay, as I said, that can happen. That can happen, especially if you really don't feel understood, and especially if you feel like there's no reasoning behind it. There are reasons that happens. I once had a student in class, and her number went from 9 to 10. She got very, very upset. But I did find out in talking to her that this had been a very, very big issue for her that she hadn't spoken about. So the conflict was not yet spoken. So it's interesting how that can affect the situation as well, whether this is confronted or not, whether anybody's been confronted or not. But I might be able to help you at a later date get that number down. 8 to 3, 7 to 4, 6 to 1. Any other numbers from anyone? So generally, numbers go down, even if it's only by 1. Is 10% worth doing? You spend 5 to 7 minutes on this exercise. Your level of upset goes down. Laura says, yes, absolutely. I agree. 10% is something. It will make you less angry. It will make you less toxic, right? It's not just about the other person, and it's not just about your relationship with the other person. It's about how you feel. Does anyone want to check in right now? Let me talk to Joanne. Joanne, you went from 6 to 1. Do you feel better inside yourself when you think about this situation? Yeah, you do. Pamela, let me talk to you. 8 to 3. Do you feel better? Do you feel less toxicity? Do you feel less anger when you think about this person or this situation? Much better. Okay, so Tiffany H., can we go back one screen, please? I just want to show what was done. And of course, you'll all have access to this. This is the first step. We write down our perspective. We rate it, right? You rate it first thing. You write the name and your rating before you do anything. Then you say why you're upset. Then you give their perspective. It is not enough to think about their perspective. It is also not enough to do 2 sentences. Go ahead to the next page, Tiffany H. Why isn't it enough to just think about it? Come on, you all know if you just think about it, you'll get it. Somebody tell me why that's not enough, why you actually have to write it. In order to get clarity, in order to get to a better place, why do you need to write it down? Makes it real. Makes it real. You're articulating their words. You may think you understand, but you may be using editorial language. You may be using judgmental language. So if my spouse doesn't do the dishes, I may say, yeah, I understand why he didn't do the dishes because he's a slob. Now, I'm not understanding why he didn't do the dishes. I'm being editorial and I'm being judgmental. If I write it down and I say, I meant to do the dishes, but I was so tired after a long day, I fell asleep. I didn't realize how much it would annoy you, and I'm sorry. I've written that down, and suddenly I realize, oh my gosh, poor baby's been working hard. He didn't mean to upset me. By writing it down, I'm truly getting at the heart of what happened. It's a misunderstanding. Where's the misunderstanding? Right? Rather than just assuming I understand. If my boss yelled at me the second I walk in and I'm just thinking about it, I could say, yeah, I understand why she yelled at me because she thinks she's the boss. She thinks she can get away with it. No, that's not true. If you write it in her words, I yelled at you because I was upset that the meeting wasn't going as planned. I was upset that the power was down all morning. I was upset that the homeless guy, came in with torn boots, and I'm thinking about if I have any boots for him. I'm upset for several reasons. And suddenly you realize, you know what? It's not about you, right? So you must write it down. And then these 7 questions are the basics in trying to understand them and trying to reframe what's going on and reframe your relationship. And particularly numbers 6 and 7 are very important. I'm not saying the others aren't important. Do you want a positive relationship or not? Because if you do, you really want to resolve this. You don't want to be resentful. You don't want to be angry, right? And how much does it matter in the future? Then let's get there. So scale of 1 to 10. So I'm really glad that you participated with that one. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Tiffany H. Let's discuss Bob Newhart. Okay, if you watched Bob Newhart, could you just type in watched or yes or Bob rocks or anything you'd like to write? What do you think about it? Type one thing you thought about this video. I know it was a little dark. Loved it. watched. Write anything you want about it. Whether you just watched it, you loved it, you hated it, you thought it was crazy funny, good. This is actually one of my favorite sketches of all time. Stop it. Oh my God, I can't even deal. As many times as I've seen it, I laugh every time. Funny. Okay, so why? Oh my God, I can't even deal. Somebody tell me, before I tell you, because I will, some thought it very funny, others disturbing. Yeah, it was a little disturbing. I can agree with that. I was discussing that with Tiffany H., whether it was too disturbing, but we have a very good reason to watch it. Precursor to The Office's No, No, No. Wait, did I watch that? No, No, No. I have to see that apparently. So before I tell you why we watched it, you tell me, what does this have to do with conflict management? What does this have to do? Obviously, it's a bad example. But what about it is such a good example of a bad example? I'm going to wait for a few answers to that question. Why is this so relevant that I made every single one of you watch it? No empathy, very true. The opposite of empathy, the opposite of listening, holding on to things. Absolutely. Good. Interesting. Most people deal with issues. Okay, Laura just hit it right on the money. Right on the money. Jennifer, exactly right too. This is what we need to avoid doing. This is how we think people work. We think if we just say stop it, they will. Now, we don't act like Bob Newhart. We think he's funny when he does this. But how many times have you thought to yourself, oh my Lord, you are really annoying me. Just stop it. Why do you act that way? Just stop it. Why are you talking that way? Why are you doing things in a way that I wouldn't do it? You need to stop acting like you're acting. How many times have we thought that? That is human nature. We see life through our own eyes. We judge things from our own background, and we want people to see things the way we do. He's funny because it's what we want to say. Exactly. We want to say, just stop it, quit it, right? But we can't say it. And when someone does it and charges money and says it's therapy, it's absolutely hilarious because it's so obvious that this is the wrong tack. It's so obvious that this is not getting anything done. Let me tell you something. In conflict management, 9 out of 10 people are trying to do this. Why didn't you wash the dishes? You should have just washed them. Stop it. Why did you yell at me? You shouldn't have yelled at me. Stop it. Right? Why are you arguing to spend the money that way? Why can't you just listen to me? Stop it. We want to do this all the time, and we can't. We can't. When we see someone do it in so many words, it's amusing, and it's amusing enough that even though it's a little bit dark and a little bit grim, I made you all watch it because it's a stellar example of what we want to do that we can't. It's like telling someone to calm down and expecting them to become more calm. Doesn't happen. It has never happened in the history of mankind. Telling someone to calm down is a way to get them more agitated. You might as well ruffle their feathers the wrong way, right? Exactly right. So here's the thing. Bob Newhart is not listening. Point number 1, not listening. Point number 2, not reflecting back anything of use. As a matter of fact, the only time he reflected back anything of use was when she said, I wash my hands. If you notice, the clip starts with him washing his hands. That he agrees with. We're all like this. We disagree until something hits us that we do as well, and then we agree with it. and we expect life to go on. Simple truth, y'all. Simple truth is we are all coming from different places. We need to know that we're going to disagree. Just because we may look alike, just because we may work in the same office, just because we may be the same age, just because we may be the same gender, any of our perceived similarities are skin deep. We're coming from different places and we see things differently. So, for example, if I have a project to do and I say to my coworker at 2:00, oh my God, this is due at 5. I really need help. Can you help me? And I think my coworker should drop everything and help me. That's what my family does. That's what my last coworker did. But my coworker thinks I'll be better off doing it myself. I need to realize I could do it. So my coworker says to me, don't worry, you can do it, and then proceeds to take a long lunch. I feel incredibly disconfirmed. I feel not supported. Is my coworker trying not to support me? No, she sees things differently. She might even say to me, you'll be fine, don't worry, and then sit down and talk to her daughter on the phone during the whole lunch period or whatever. And you'll feel not supported. But we're coming from different places. We have different expectations. We can't expect people to just stop it. We can't expect people to simply act how we think it's appropriate. And it's so hilarious to watch him. He says, oh my God, that's disgusting. That must be frightening. It's like, from my perspective, I completely don't get it. But he made absolutely no move to try to get it, which is why this is a brilliant example of what not to do, right? All right. Any questions about why we watched this or any other comments about this sketch? Do you guys get what a good example it is of what not to do? And I don't mean saying stop it. I mean thinking it. Yep, you do. Good, good. Feel free to pass this on. At the very least, someone will laugh. So good, excellent, excellent. All right, Tiffany, let's go ahead to the next slide. All right, I'd like you all to weigh in on every one of these. Just write the number so that we know which number you're answering. 1, conflict is always negative. Go. Thank God. No, it's not always negative. As a matter of fact, often it's incredibly positive, and our goal is to make it positive. Just to make life a little bit harder, can you give me one way to make conflict positive? Give me one way to make conflict positive. I'm looking for the first 5 answers here. The first 6 answers. Go ahead. One way to make it positive. Change, growth, absolutely beautiful. Listen. It helps you grow. Beautiful. Solution to a problem. You're all good. You're all good. Truly listen to the other person without waiting for them to hear what you want to say. Listen first to understand the other side. Exactly right. Exactly right. Another thing that Stephen Covey said is that most people listen in order to wait for the other person to be done so that they can respond. And that is not appropriate listening. We want to actually listen. And to show that we're listening, one of the ways we discussed in the webinar is paraphrasing. So if Tiffany says to me, Sharon, I'm really upset because my cat was sick and you didn't ask me how it was. All right. And I say to her, but I didn't know it was sick. Or I say, that's not my problem, or I'm not concerned. I can say whatever I want, but why don't I show that I was listening? Why don't I say, oh, so your cat was really sick. I'm so sorry to hear that your kitty was sick. What happened? Now I'm questioning, I'm paraphrasing, I'm showing that I was listening, which is just as useful as listening, is actually showing that you were listening. through questioning or paraphrasing as just a couple of options. Good. Number 2, peace is the absence of conflict. Let's see what you have to say about that one. Peace is the absence of conflict. True or false? A lot of people saying false. You're all correct. Yeah. You know what peace is? Peace is managing conflict effectively. Peace is when conflict is managed effectively. It's not the lack of conflict. So, for example, you are not able to stay late because you have to pick up your child from school. But I'm not able to come early because I have to drop off my husband. Well, when are we going to have meetings? Are we going to be in constant conflict? No. We're going to manage that conflict. We're going to agree that once a week we stay late, once a week we come in early, and we're compromising. That is peace. It's not the absence of conflict. It's working through the conflict to have a way to operate. Some people keep the peace and don't speak their mind, but inside they're frustrated and stewing. Right, or you work together during lunch. Exactly. You know, I want to talk to this point that Jennifer brought up. I do some relationship counseling, just at work or whatever. People know that I'm into conflict management. So sometimes people come to me with relationship issues. And the biggest red flag that I see is when people come in and say, we never fight. We never fight. We've dated for 2 years. We haven't fought. We've been married for 3 years. We never fight. I look at that with a huge barrel of salt. Somebody is shutting up. That's just not possible. Thank you very much. That's exactly where the explosions come from. The first thing we saw today when we looked at examples of conflict is an explosion. Explosions come from tamping things down. Explosions come from trying to pretend there's not a difference of opinion. That's exactly right. So when there are no fights, when there are no conflicts, when there are no differences of opinion, I am extremely suspicious, because what I see is somebody in this relationship is not being honest. Because I don't care if you're identical twins, you're still going to have a difference of opinion. Great. So we've got that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is, in fact, working with conflict in a manageable way. Assertiveness is generally seen as aggressive. What do y'all think? Assertiveness can be confused with being aggressive. It's generally seen as aggressive. Number 3. Laura thinks true. Pamela thinks no. Ooh, we're getting a difference of opinion. Okay, so it was a slightly trick question. In society, assertiveness can be confused with aggressiveness. However, the term assertive is actually a positive term, and we need to reframe it in our vocabulary so that it's a positive term. Assertive literally means being able to speak your mind without hurting anyone. Assertive is not aggressive. Right. It may not be, but it's perceived as aggressive. Laura, you're right. The term assertive can be perceived as aggressive. People will say New Yorkers are assertive, meaning New Yorkers are aggressive, right? Or you'll feel aggressive. Let me show you the difference. Not yet assertive, yet not assertive is passive aggressive. If you're being aggressive and you're pretending to be assertive, that's passive aggressive. So let me show you examples of each. I see the chair that Pamela is sitting in. I want to sit in that chair. I say, Pamela, give me your chair. I want to sit in it. Is that assertive or aggressive? Give me your chair. I want to sit in it. You're exactly right. It's aggressive. That is not appropriately assertive. I am aggressive because part of aggressive means I take away something from you. The same as if I'm hitting you. The same as if I'm emotionally abusing you. I am taking away a chair that you're sitting in. That is aggressive. If I'm going to be assertive, it would sound something like this. Pamela, I see that you're sitting in a chair with arms. My chair doesn't have arms. May I ask you to switch with me, please, so that I could be a little bit more comfortable? Would that be okay? Pamela, do you feel that I'm being aggressive? Nope, you would move. Does anybody feel that I'm being aggressive? I explained myself. I asked for what I wanted. That was appropriately assertive. Note to self, y'all. Appropriately assertive means no one gets hurt emotionally, physically. And if she said no, I would look around and say, is there anyone that is sitting in a chair with arms that I could switch with? That would be appropriately assertive. Tone has everything to do with it. Tone has everything to do with it, Tiffany. You're exactly right. Let me try another one. You tell me if this is assertive or aggressive. I know we decided to do the fundraiser on Sunday. Unfortunately, I cannot make it in on Sunday. Can I do the pre-work on Friday and Saturday, even though I can't come in on Sunday? Is that assertive or aggressive? That's correct. That's assertive. I'm basically saying, I can't do it. It doesn't work for me, but here's what I'm willing to give. You know how I would be aggressive? Here's aggressive. Y'all decided on Sunday, even though I told you I might not be available, and I'm not. So I'm not going to be here. That's aggressive. I'm basically punishing you. I'm making you feel bad. I'm taking away my presence. Rather than saying, I can't be here, I'm going to put in my presence another time. So assertiveness is actually positive. I want to try to tweak your perspective. This is homework. Your homework is to decide, would you like to be seen as an appropriately assertive person without being seen as aggressive? Would you like to be described as an appropriately assertive person? If the answer is yes, I'd like you to practice being gently assertive, appropriately assertive. Be honest, speak your mind. So, for example, if your honey tells you, I didn't want to cook dinner tonight, I'm ordering in pizza if that's okay, and you don't want pizza, you can be gently assertive and say, if it's okay with you, would you mind if we ordered in something a little bit more substantial than pizza because it's been a long day? Is that aggressive or assertive? It's assertive. Aggressive would be, really? I come home from a long day and you're ordering in pizza? That's supposed to make me feel good, right? That would be aggressive. Making someone else feel bad is aggressive. Saying what you want is assertive. Who is willing to practice being appropriately assertive this week? We have 2 more days in this week. Who's willing to practice being appropriately assertive? Terry will. Jessica will. Great. Listen, you want to be assertive. You know who gets promotions? People who are appropriately assertive, who can ask for the promotion in a way that's not aggressive, in a way that doesn't hurt anybody else. People who are appropriately assertive walk up the mountain of life in a positive way. If we are not assertive, that's when we become doormats. And if we're aggressive, people fear us. So you might win the battle and lose the war. So we're all together on number 3. Oh, I see I have 5 minutes left, so I need to hustle just a little bit. Nice people should always agree with each other. We're on number 4, true or false? That is so false. Thank you for everybody for saying no. Nice people are totally welcome to be assertive. Do you want me to agree with you if I don't? No. If you are celebrating my birthday and you say, Sharon, for your birthday, I am buying the richest chocolate cake I could find, and I don't like chocolate, do you want me to say, okay, cool, that sounds good? No, you want me to say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. But, or I don't even have to say but, can we go with vanilla instead of chocolate? Because I love vanilla. I love buttercream frosting, right? Okay. 5, better to be surrounded by people who agree with us. True or false? Number 5, so false. So false. Desiree's on it. Terry's on it. Yes, Laura, Joanne, you're all on it. So false. We do not actually want to be surrounded by people who agree with us. We won't get into politics, but sometimes we see politicians who want to be surrounded by people who agree with them. That tends not to work well. We have someone, right, exactly. Thank you, Linda. Exactly right. We have someone like Lincoln who asked for people to be on his cabinet who disagreed with him so that he would have a sense of checking himself. He would have a sense of another perspective. We should avoid conflict at work at all costs. Go for it. Yes, false or true. We should avoid conflict at work at all costs. So some of these are redundant. I get it. I can't be strong enough about this. Great. What about this one? 7, we have the power to turn dysfunctional conflicts into functional ones. That's exactly right. I hereby grant you the power. We are empowered. Laura's like, now we do. Definitely. You have the power, personally, individually, to be in a conflict that is you and one other person, that is you and 5 other people, and to start to make it more functional. It might not happen in 1 second. It might take a little work. But there are ways to take the most dysfunctional conflict where people are screaming and make it functional. I'm going to give you an example of taking a really dysfunctional conflict. You know, I brought in an example last time from my family. I'll bring in another one. My mother and I were having a very bad fight when I was a teenager. I think I was about 18 years old, and we were yelling at each other. And she really disapproved of my choices, and I disapproved of her disapproval, and we were yelling at each other. Tiffany H., did I tell this story already? Just tell me if I told this already.
No, I don't think you did.
Okay. So we're yelling at each other. And my mother says to me, Sharon, do you know how much I love you? And I said, yes, a lot. You love me a lot. You love me enough to tell me everything I do is wrong. And she said, no. She says, do you know how much I love you? If you killed someone, do you know what I would do? And I said, yes, you would lie for me. I know you would, whatever. And she said, I would help you bury the body. And she's yelling at me at the top of her lungs, and we're laughing. And all of a sudden, we're laughing. And all of a sudden, we're crying and we're laughing and we're hugging each other. And that incredibly dysfunctional conflict where we were yelling and calling each other names turned into a much more functional conflict where we were laughing at ourselves and each other. How did it happen? It happened with a reminder that we love each other. So sometimes in the middle of the worst ever conflict, you can actually say to someone, you can say, so let's say you're arguing with your significant other. You can actually say, you know what, I need a second. I'm going to go get a drink of water. Can I get you one? What is the power in the middle of an argument of basically saying, I care about you. I'm getting myself something, I want to get you something. Or you're arguing with your boss, you're having a tense moment with your boss, and you say, it's hard for me to hear that, but I want to think about it because I really respect your opinion. In that moment, you're sharing that you respect their opinion. All of these are techniques to turn dysfunctional conflicts into functional ones, where you share that you respect the other person, you care about the other person. So let's go ahead to the next slide, which is our last slide. Quotes to live by. One factor that makes the difference. The factor is attitude. That was a drum roll. That factor is attitude. You can have a conflict about anything you want. The difference is the attitude. We are in this together. We are going to be stronger for this. I appreciate you. I understand you. I want to understand you. It's about attitude. What about this one? I must try to see the difference between my picture of a person and his behavior as it is narcissistically distorted through my eyes and the person's reality, regardless of my own interests. That's not easy. That is not easy. Eric Fromm is exactly right. And wait a second, Miss Tiffany, we need to put a quote. We need to put who said this one? No one can drive you crazy unless you get in the car. You know who that's by? Moi. It's by me, Sharon Eisner. No one can drive you crazy. Road trip with Laura. Laura, I love it, but I'm not getting in the car. You can't drive me crazy. You can try, but I'm not getting in the car. So this is from me. No one can drive you crazy unless you get in the car. They can try. They can throw stones at you. They can call names at you. They can yell at you. But you're not in a conflict unless you decide to be in the conflict. If we had time, I would have you try to rile me, and I would respond by trying to understand better rather than getting in the car and going for the conflict. So that quote is by me. No one can drive you crazy unless you get in the car. I love that Terry's going to tattoo those or write them above her computer. Y'all are awesome. It was such a pleasure. Did you get something out of today? Sorry to keep you a couple minutes late. It was wonderful getting to know you all just a little bit. I will make it to South Carolina before too long when the weather gets better. My pleasure. My pleasure. If anyone has any questions, please know that you can reach me. You can talk to me. If you have a specific conflict you want to talk about, that's totally fine. I will make time for that. That's not something I would charge for or anything like that. So you're welcome to get my contact information from Tiffany. You're welcome to ask me questions about any of these webinars. And of course, if you'd like me to present at any point, I'm happy to do that as well. Pleasure meeting you all. Take care. Have a wonderful day.
All right. And I will quit the recording now.